Madoka Kaname, a middle school student, has a dream last night of a raven-haired girl. She is surprised to see that the same raven-haired girl, known as Homura Akimi, has enrolled in her school the next day. Homura, who seems to already know Madoka, warns her to stay the way she's or risk losing everything she knows and loves. After school is done, the latter goes shopping with her friend Sayaka Miki, during which the both of them hear a strange voice luring her to an abandoned area of the mall. Madoka encounters a strange cat-like creature called Kyubi being attacked by Homura, who is revealed to be a magical girl. Homura orders Madoka to stay away from Kyubi. All the while, Sayaka arrives and escapes with Madoka only to be trapped in a magical barrier and be pursued by bizarre monsters. They are then rescued by another magical girl named Mami Tomo, who uses her magic abilities to repel the monsters. Homura appears again and is confronted by Mami, who tells her that she will overlook the attack on Kyubi as she does not want to fight in front of the other girls. Homura then leaves. Kyubi is healed by Mami's powers and explains that he wishes to form a contract with Madoka and Sayaka to make them magical girls. Mami and Kyubi explain to Madoka and Sayaka that Kyubi can grant people's wishes, but in exchange, those who make them must become magical girls to fight against witches who are created from curses. Mami offers to take Madoka and Sayaka with her on a witch hunt to determine whether there is a wish they would risk their lives for. The next day, Kyubi, who is invisible to normal people, joins Madoka and Sayaka at school where they learn to communicate with each other via telepathy. Homura again visits Madoka to repeat her warning and refuses to answer when Madoka asks what her wish is. After school, Madoka, Sayaka, and Mami follow the aura of the witch from the previous day to an abandoned building where they save a woman from committing suicide, who is under the influence of the witch. They enter a portal inside the building where Mami finds and defeats the witch responsible, earning a grief seed which can be used to recover magical power. Sayaka visits an injured boy named Kyosu Kamijo, who was a violin player she admired when she was little. After defeating a witch's familiar, Mami tells Madoka and Sayaka that she was in a traffic accident and did not have time to think about her wish. She also lets Sayaka know about the precedence for wishing on behalf of other people. Later that night, as Madoka helps her mother and talks with her father, Mami is approached by Homura, who warns her about making Madoka a magical girl. The next day, while visiting the hospital, Madoka and Sayaka find a grief seed that is close to activating. Sayaka and Kyubi enter the portal ahead of them while Madoka goes to find Mami. As Madoka and Mami catch up with them, Homura tries to warn Mami about the witch, but Mami binds her to stop her from following them. As they continue, Madoka mentions that her wish is to be a magical girl and help others simply. Mami laments that her job as a magical girl has left her lonely and afraid, but on the other hand feels happy that Madoka wishes to fight alongside her. Mami fights the doll-like witch Charlotte only for the witch to suddenly transform into a vast caterpillar-like creature that kills Mami right before Madoka's eyes. Homura, free from Mami's demise, defeats Charlotte and claims the grief seed before leaving behind a mortified Madoka and heavily resentful Sayaka. As Sayaka worries about Kisu, Madoka reveals she is too traumatized to become a magical girl after witnessing Mami's death, so Kyubi chooses to leave her alone. Homura approaches Madoka and informs her that Mami, along with the other magical girls she has witnessed die throughout her time, would simply be regarded as missing by normal people. Madoka says that she will never forget Mami or the fact that Homura saved her life despite Homura's warning that her goodwill may be used against her. Sayaka agrees to a contract with Kyubi while Kisu gets increasingly agitated and desperate about his illness, which prevents him from playing the violin. Out in the city, Madoka witnesses other people infected by Charlotte's kiss, including her classmate Atomi Shizuki, planning to commit suicide by combining cleaning products. When Madoka foils the mass suicide attempt, they pursue her to a closet, where she is apprehended by a witch who tortures her, with memories of Mami's death. Sayaka, who had become a magical girl after using her wish to cure Keisuke's hand, staves her, much to Homura's surprise. In other news, Kyubi welcomes a newly arrived magical girl named Kyoko Sakura, who is displeased because Sayaka has taken over the region Mami formerly looked after. Both Madoka and Homura express concern about Sayaka's decision to become a magical girl. Sayaka visits Kyosuke and feels happy that he is finally able to play his violin once again. Madoka asks Homura to become friends with Sayaka, not wanting her to suffer the same fate as Mami, though Homura's words that those who become magical girls cannot be saved do nothing to comfort her or ease her pain. Later that day, Madoka joins Sayaka to search for a witch's familiar, but it escapes when Sayaka's attacks are blocked by Kyoko, who only cares about collecting grief seeds from mature witches. Kyoko's selfishness greatly angers Sayaka, and the two magical girls clash violently, with Madoka too powerless to intervene. As Kyoko gets the upper hand, Madoka considers using her wish to stop the fighting, but Homura steps in before she can do so. Homura knocks Sayaka down and orders Kyoko to leave before imploring Madoka once more not to get involved and insisting that she give up on Sayaka. Kyubi tells Sayaka about Madoka's potential to become a magical girl, but Sayaka refuses to let Madoka get involved. Homura meets Kyoko, explaining that Walpurgisnacht is coming up in 2 weeks. Kyoko agrees to ally with her to combat it. Madoka is concerned about Sayaka, who refuses to talk to Kyoko and has a grudge against Homura, whom she blames for Mami's death. Sayaka is confronted again the next evening by Kyoko, who provokes her into another battle on top of a highway bridge. Before the combat can begin, Madoka comes and tosses Sayaka's soul gem, the source of her magical energy, down the bridge to put an end to it. Sayaka dies unexpectedly, surprising both Madoka and Kyoko. As part of the deal, Kyubi discloses that the soul gem physically houses the magical girl's soul, while their body is a shell that can only be controlled within 100 meters of the soul gem. Homura hurries to get the soul gem and returns it to Sayaka, restoring her. Sayaka becomes enraged at Kyubi for failing to inform her about the migration of her soul as part of her contract. In response, Kyubi explains this to her. Because Sayaka was not injured by Kyoko, he brutally punishes her by touching her soul gem. The next day, Madoka confronts Homura about Kyubi's failure to disclose his manipulation of Sayaka's soul gem to them. Kyoko converses with Sayaka and takes her to a church that belonged to her father before he was expelled for his controversial ideas. She describes how she struck a deal with Kyubi to get people to listen to her father's sermons, but when he found out, he broke down and killed himself and his family, leaving Kyoko alone. Sayaka apologizes to Kyoko, but ignores her instruction to live for herself. Kyosuke returns to school the next day, but Sayaka avoids him. Hitomi confronts her about it, revealing that she too is in love with Kyosuke, giving Sayaka one day to confess to him before she does. Sayaka sobs in front of Madoka, convinced that she can never be with Kyosuke since she feels she is no longer human. Sayaka then fights a witch that night while ignoring Kyoko's assistance and attacking the witch wildly, indifferent to the harm done to her body, laughing maniacally. Sayaka kills the witch but refuses to accept the grief seed she creates. Madoka attempts to reason with Sayaka, who blames Madoka for her condition before fleeing. While Homura and Kiko are discussing Walpurgisnacht, Kyubi approaches them and warns them that if Sayaka's soul gem is not cleansed, something horrible would happen. Sayaka does not come home that night and instead watches as Hitomi confesses to Kyosuke the next day, further devastating her. Homura approaches her and offers her a grief seed, but Sayaka refuses it once more since she does not trust her. Homura prepares to kill Sayaka to save Madoka from the pain of witnessing Sayaka's death, but Kyoko intervenes, allowing Sayaka to flee. Kyubi forces Madoka to make a wish to save Sayaka, but Homura shoots him before she can. She sobs in front of Madoka and tells her not to be so self-sacrificing. Madoka has the impression she has encountered Homura before, but she goes to look for Sayaka, while a replacement Kyubi enters, identifying Homura as a being from another timeline. Kyoko discovers Sayaka, who is said to have murdered 2 men on the train. Sayaka confesses her foolishness in front of her soul gem, which has gone fully black, shattering and transforming into a grief seed. Elsewhere, Kyubi muses that a woman who has yet to mature is called a girl, and that magical girl is the corresponding term for a witch who has yet to mature. As a witch emerges in front of Kyoko, Homura enters and uses her time manipulation to assist Kyoko in escaping, bringing Sayaka's body to Madoka. Homura explains that the witch was Sayaka, whose soul gem had become corrupted with sadness and had changed into a grief seed. Later that night, Kyubi appears in front of Madoka again, revealing that his species known as incubators select teenage girls and raises them to become witches to acquire powerful energy from the transition from hope to despair to prevent the universe's heat death. Madoka also learns from him that incubators are emotionless and do not comprehend human morality. The revelations distress her. Desperately clinging to the hope that there may still be a way to save Sayaka, Kyoko asks Madoka to help her try to reach Sayaka's human feelings and obtain her soul gem from the witch. As the two enter the portal to fight the witch, Kyoko suffers the brunt of its strikes while Madoka uses words to reach Sayaka. When Sayaka attacks Madoka, Kyoko orders Homura to take Madoka to safety while she sacrifices herself to destroy Sayaka. Kyubi, who knew there was no way to save Sayaka, taunts Homura, saying that without Koiko, she will be unable to stop Walpurgisnacht until Madoka becomes a magical girl. In an alternate timeline, Homura is a shy transfer student who makes friends with the cheerful Madoka. Lacking confidence in herself as she had been in hospital for the past 6 months, Homura is attacked by a witch but is rescued by Madoka and Mami, both of whom are magical girls. When Madoka and Mami are killed in the battle against Walpurgisnacht, Homura contracts with Kyubi to send her back in time so that she can protect Madoka. She joins Madoka and Mami and learns how to use her magical powers for combat, stopping time whilst using stolen firearms and explosives. However, after the battle against Walpurgisnacht, Homura witnesses Madoka transforming into a witch and realizes that Kyubi had been deceiving everyone. She attempts to tell the others during the next time loop. They do not believe her until Sayaka transforms into a witch and the remaining magical girls are forced to kill her. After the battle, Mami kills Kyoko and turns her gun on Homura in an attempt to prevent them from becoming witches. Madoka stops Mami with deadly force, leaving just her and Homura to face the Walpurgisnacht. With her soul gems drained, Madoka uses her final grief seed on Homura, pleading with her to return to the past to avoid being tricked by Kyubi. She then requests that Homura murder her before she transforms into a witch. Returning to the past with a colder attitude, Homura tries to prevent Kyubi from ever meeting Madoka and chooses to fight against the witches herself. This finally fails and she's forced to go across multiple timelines to save Madoka. Kyubi reveals to Homura that the reason Madoka has the potential to become such a powerful witch is that Homura's constant trips through time to try to save Madoka have resulted in her becoming the center point of countless timelines, as a magical girl's potential is determined by the relative effect of their role on fate. Following Sayaka's burial, Kyubi reveals to Madoka the history of magical girls and how it has influenced civilization, bringing Madoka much grief. Junko, Madoka's mother, becomes concerned about her and suspects her daughter is hiding something from her. Madoka visits Homura, who reassures her that she can handle Walpurgisnacht and eventually reveals the truth about herself. As a storm sweeps over the city, forcing the residents to seek shelter, Homura stands alone to fight Walpurgisnacht, but despite her best attempts, she is overwhelmed and finally defeated. When Madoka learns from Kyubi that Homura may become a witch if he loses hope of saving her, she plans to go find her. Although Junko attempts to stop her, Madoka persuades her that she is doing the right thing. As Homura begins to lose faith and consider becoming a witch, Madoka appears with Kyubi and declares her intention to grant her wish. Madoka decides to become a magical girl and wishes to prevent all witches from being born. Her wish's contradictory nature forces her to transcend into a godlike psychopomp, establishing a new law of cycles, where magical girls are cleansed and ascend onto a higher plane of existence rather than becoming witches. Homura then returns to a universe where Mami and Kyoko are still alive, but only Homura remembers Madoka's existence. She and the other magical girls continue to battle creatures now known as wraiths, and Homura resolves to fight on in honor of Madoka. The series concludes on a cliffhanger.